the Alliance for America's Fish and Wildlife reception, celebrating the Recovering America's Wildlife Act. Quick reminder, please mute yourselves as you come in if you are not already muted, just to limit background noise and distractions. We've got a great event planned for you all this evening, some very special guests. Before I introduce our speakers, let me just quickly introduce myself and the Alliance for folks. I'm Sean Seville, manager of the Alliance for America's Fish and Wildlife campaign for the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies. The Alliance for America's Fish and Wildlife, of course, is a broad and diverse partnership united around a shared vision of securing dedicated funding for the future of fish and wildlife conservation, and supporters of the campaign to enact the Recovering America's Wildlife Act. So thank you to all the conservation leaders, many of which are gathered here tonight and in this conference, and of course to the champions of the bill in Congress that have kindly offered to be here with us tonight. Hard to believe that it was a year ago this week that many of us saw each other for the last time in person in Omaha at this conference. I recall vividly getting on the flight back to DC from Omaha and seeing Congressman Fortenberry in the aisle walking into the plane and being excited to tell him about all the great conversations that we had just had about the campaign and about the bill, and how excited supporters were to be standing by to see this bill across the finish line. And he was pleased to hear all of that. Little did we know the months ahead would hold, but together we've managed to advance this vision and the legislation closer to the goal line. So it's my great pleasure to introduce our Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies President and Director of the Missouri Department of Conservation, Sarah Parker Pauley.
Well, welcome everybody, and so appreciate everyone taking the time to recognize that this is the year. It's going to happen, and I just know it. But just to remind us why we are here, we really are standing at the precipice of a biodiversity crisis and a transformational shift in the way of life we have all known. We have an amazing opportunity in front of us to work together to make a positive change for future generations. And I think of Patty Allen and little Wyatt in her lap. So look her up right now on the screen, because we're talking about Wyatt and future generations. To slow down the species decline and negative impacts to our economy we've been seeing. And if we can stay the course and see this game-changing legislation through, we will be successful in implementing this innovative new model of conservation funding and see very tangible outcomes for wildlife in our lifetimes and beyond. We at the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies and all of our partners would like to thank Congresswoman Dingell and Congressman Fortenberry for their ongoing bipartisan leadership of the Recovering America's Wildlife Act. Their collaborative partnership and dedication to this historic vision for wildlife conservation funding is such an inspiration to all of us, and they deserve a round of applause from all of us. So here we go, a round of applause. But Congresswoman Dingell, I know that you're in the crowd, and I'm going to go ahead and introduce you and let you say a few words. And then as we have Congressman Fortenberry or Senator Heinrich, will introduce them as well. But a brief introduction to Congresswoman Debbie Dingell, who represents Michigan's 12th district in the U.S. House of Representatives, where she has made it a priority to be a voice for the Midwest on issues that matter most to working families. She sits on the House committees on natural resources and also on energy and commerce, and is co-chair of the Congressional Sportsmen's Caucus. Congresswoman Dingell is known for reaching across the aisle to work on bipartisan solutions to our nation's toughest challenges, as is the case with the Recovering America's Wildlife Act, a prime example of her bipartisan collaborative spirit. So with that, Congresswoman Dingell, welcome, and please say a few words if you would.
Thank you, Sarah, and I really appreciate those kind words. But it's good to be with everybody. As I was looking at the Zoom, I was seeing many familiar faces that I've worked with over the years, some from here and some from across the country. I hate the fact that I'm looking at everybody in boxes, but at least we can gather with each other and feel that human connection on an issue that we really care about deeply. And I hope that we're going to be able to be together soon. I don't guess my co-partner in all of this, Congressman Jeff Fortenberry, isn't here, but I can't tell you how much I love working with him and how committed we are to doing this together. To Senator Heinrich, who is really championing this in the Senate. Jeff Crane, who's president of the Congressional Sportsmen's Foundation. And I want to tell you what an honor it is for me to be one of the co-chairs. And Colin O'Mara, who is just such a wise person and gives me so much advice, and we wouldn't be where we were if it wasn't for all of you, but Colin's been instrumental. You know, nearly 2 years ago, which quite frankly feels like a lifetime ago, we were all together for the introduction of the Recovering America's Wildlife Act. It was an unforgettable, historic day, and we've been working every day since we did that to build a broad bipartisan coalition behind this legislation and the cause. And I am more optimistic than I've ever been, because this bill represents a strong commitment to addressing the current biodiversity crisis using innovative state-based management that will safeguard our nation's environmental heritage for current and future generations. It proposes to dedicate $1.3 billion in dedicated funding for the Wildlife Conservation Restoration Program, which will help promote conservation and species protection so that future generations can enjoy them. And hopefully it'll ultimately get more people outdoors, enjoying the outdoors, not COVID forced, but wanting to be out there. From hunters and anglers to bird watchers and even backyard gardeners who love birds and butterflies. I use the monarch butterfly as an example of one of people love that butterfly. This is exactly the type of big, bold project that we need to have as a modern conservation policy for the 21st century. Without a change in the way we finance fish and wildlife conservation, the list of federally threatened and endangered species is expected to grow from 1,600 species to thousands more in the future. The new dedicated funding created by the Recovering America's Wildlife Act is aimed at preventing wildlife from becoming endangered to ensure the long-term health of all of our fish and wildlife that provide countless hours of outdoor enjoyment for the nation's citizens. Built on the premise that the best way to save America's wildlife is through collaborative, proactive, on-the-ground conservation. RAWA will help recover 12,000 species considered in need, including the 1,600 that are currently listed on the Endangered Species Act. I'm proud of how this bill got crafted in 2019, and every step of the way we've worked in a bipartisan manner with all the stakeholders at the table. This bill will really help the states on the front lines of conservation of our nation's wildlife, and it's critical that we provide them with the resources that they need to prevent wildlife from becoming endangered. And we know that all of you at the state and local agencies have been stretched to breaking points by this pandemic. You know why else I'm proud? I'm proud because it builds off past successes with Pittman-Robertson and the Dingell-Johnson Act. By the way, that Dingell isn't me or my husband. It was his father, my father-in-law, many decades ago, who recognized the importance of all of this. We know that it's going to take time and that we got to stay focused. But given our collaboration so far, I'm confident that working together, we can get this through committee, we'll get this through the process. And with the senator on our side, we are going to be able to secure the future for our grandchildren in the great outdoors. So I look forward to working with all of you in these next few months to make this a reality. And I'd like to turn this over to my partner and great defender for Fish and Wildlife, but I don't know, is Congressman Fortenberry on yet?
I believe that he has
Debbie,
joined us. I would say he's
So
in
there
the
he is.
virtual house.
Jeff, I'm honored to turn this over to
Welcome,
you. And
Congressman
you are
Fortenberry.
Well, thank you. Well said, Debbie, and thank you, Congresswoman Dingle, for your collaborative partnership. You said it beautifully that this all along has been a bipartisan initiative, and the reason that it can be a bipartisan initiative is because it is about higher good things. And first of all, let me thank all of you who have dedicated your lives to conservation and the protection of pristine ecosystems, natural and wildlife spaces, natural spaces that are made for both recreation and wildlife, and all of the attending benefits that come with being a part of this deeper value of stewardship. And that's what this is. I think most people are longing for all of us who have authority in government particularly to talk about that which is noble and higher and good. And what better way to do that than to talk about precious ecosystems and beautiful green spaces that allow the vastness and rich resources of our country to be showcased and appropriately utilized for the benefit of community and persons, and the protection, the ongoing stewardship and protection of that which we cannot lose. So Recovering America's Wildlife Act, of course, as Congresswoman Dingle so eloquently put it, moves us from the possibilities of regulation and litigation to collaboration so that we move way upstream and have those spaces set aside that are necessary to protect species that are endangered, to create additional habitat for wildlife and recreational purposes, biking, trails, hunting, and all, again, the host of other community benefits that come from this. I think we're living in a time where I studied economics, but there's a thing called a preference curve, and there's a lot of preferences aligning. And maybe it's the result of this pandemic that has caused so much suffering and difficulty. Honestly, I see more people in the park right down the street in my neighborhood than I ever have before. I see more people walking their animals. I see more wildlife in the city. There can be some tensions there. But I think most people kind of accept that trade-off that we want to create the integration of habitat around us for our enjoyment and allow ourselves easy access to that which is nurturing, refreshing, and can bring about a revitalization in community. And again, what better way to do that than being a part of the precious outdoors? Again, Recovering America's Wildlife Act, we've been through a lot of legislative process. It continues to build momentum. I'm happy that we passed the Great American Outdoors Act last year, which enhanced our national park system and the Land and Water Conservation Fund. RAWA will further increase the ability of you as state directors to have the flexibility and needed resources to have this continuity of habitat in combination with the community benefits of recreation, so that we are providing this major public good that is in high demand that brings people together. So I see this as a real unifying piece of legislation, serious public policy, bipartisan in nature. And again, I want to thank Congresswoman Dingle for her leadership and also her friendship. Again, in this time in which we are all searching for ways forward, wildlife management and recreation, of course, isn't the fullness of an answer to all of human needs, but it is a significant part of it. Again, to have that place where we can all refresh, enjoy, and then go deeper in terms of protecting and maybe regenerating things so that they are better in the future. So that's why I've been a supporter of this and wanted to thank you all as you kick off your conference. It's my understanding, Alan, you say 86 years you've been doing this. And I wanted to thank you for the invitation. I'm very grateful and honored to be able to interact with you on this and many other things. Sarah, are you coordinating? Back to you, Sarah. And thank you
so much,
for the
Congressman.
interaction.
I am. I thank you so much. And I'm delighted to have you both on. And I just want to thank you as a state director for both of you serving as co-champions for Recovering America's Wildlife Act. And Congressman, you said it well. We've all seen it across the country during this time of the pandemic that people have sought solace in nature. And I believe that this is a unique opportunity where people are realizing in a new way how important the out-of-doors fish and wildlife is. So thank you for serving as co-champions on the House side. And now to our champion on the Senate side, I am so delighted to have Senator Martin Heinrich, who represents the state of New Mexico as a U.S. Senator and has held that seat since 2012. The senator serves on the Energy and Natural Resources Committee and was instrumental in shepherding the Great American Outdoors Act through the Senate toward its successful enactment last year. As an avid sportsman and conservationist, the senator serves as the co-chair of the Congressional Sportsmen's Caucus and also as a member of the Senate Outdoor Industry Caucus and as a member of the Migratory Bird Commission. Senator Heinrich served as a member of the House of Representatives before being elected as a senator and also served as a city councilman in Albuquerque. Even before that, he led the Coalition for the New Mexico Wilderness, where he worked alongside our very own Sean Seville. He's been a vocal champion for Recovering America's Wildlife Act and has worked behind the scenes to line up support in the Senate for this very important priority. And Senator, we're just delighted to have you here this evening and perhaps share a few words with us.
Thank you, Sarah. And I am so grateful that you didn't allow Sean to introduce me because I was afraid he was going to start telling stories from a different era. But I want to start by just thanking all of you and thanking our congressional champions, Congresswoman Dingell, Congressman Fortenberry. Thank you so much for your efforts on this. You know, my natural habitat is not here in Washington, D.C. And literally every week I struggle with getting on the plane and leaving the blue skies and the mountain vistas of my home state and coming out to what all too often are the sort of gray, rainy skies of Washington, D.C. And it really is the opportunity to do something meaningful like RAWA that keeps me coming back every week. You know, we did great things in the previous Congress with the Dingell Act, including some quite a lot of New Mexico provisions that I'm very, very proud of. We did enormously important things with the Great American Outdoors Act. And I've been asked a number of times, like, after that, what else is there? And I always answer Recovering America's Wildlife Act, because we have laid the stage for really a continual investment in the habitat and the public lands that we all need for the things that we care about. But we really need to do a better job in this country funding the species conservation that puts wildlife at the center of all these issues. And I think this is enormously important legislation. I think it is, you know, we have the mold, which is the bipartisan work that we've done in the past. No one expected those things to get done in the last couple of years. And because of all the incredible grassroots support across the political spectrum, across the continent, we were able to do those things. And we should just follow the same plan and get this done so that, you know, Debbie was talking about the monarch butterfly. I mean, nothing, when I was really young, I used to, I was part of 4-H, and one of the things I did in 4-H was actually entomology. And I had this enormous insect collection that I won a lot of awards with. And I just think of all the time I spent in the outdoors and the incredible amount of insect life that it's just not the same for my kids. You know, we're not seeing as many butterflies in New Mexico, even though we have an amazing natural habitat in the house they grew up in. And we owe our kids a better world than that we owe them a world where both game species and non-game species are a part of our everyday lives. And that's what RAWA is really all about. And I sure look forward to working with all of you to get this across the finish line.
Thank you so much, Senator. And I tell you, I'm just so encouraged after listening to our champions, both on the House and the Senate side. just very, very grateful for all of you. So another round of applause. Senator Heinrich, Congressman Fortenberry, Congresswoman Dingell, thank you. Thank you for your leadership in this important area. So grateful for you all. So now we're going to transition. And at this point in time, I would like to introduce the co-chairs of the Alliance Campaign's Legislative Working Group. First of all, President of the Congressional Sportsmen's Foundation, Mr. Jeff Crane, and also President and CEO of the National Wildlife Federation, Colin O'Mara. Jeff and Colin, I hope that Colin's in the house. There he is. It's great to see both of you. Welcome, and please share a few words.
Thanks, Sarah. Appreciate it. I'm joked a few times that I got volunteered for this job, and that's not really a joke, because I did get volunteered for this job by Governor Freudenthal, who was the co-chair of the Blue Ribbon panel, and I was smart enough to lean on Colin O'Mara and ask him to co-chair the legislative policy. And I know that after getting a monumentally far in the last Congress and getting RAWA through the House, that I think we've got a real shot at getting this done. And I think one of the key factors to that is the enthusiasm and dedication and commitment of the champions that you just heard. These are folks that worked closely and championed the Great American Outdoors Act, the Dingell Act, the ACE Act in the last Congress. And so we've got folks that care about this issue. We've got folks that know how to reach across the aisle. And for a change, we've got a champion in the majority in the Senate, which is a different dynamic. And having worked with Senator Heinrich on a lot of things, I know he is extremely capable of generating bipartisan support. So things are in a positive direction. You know, I get accused sometimes of being the negative guy, and I'm not negative. I'm just realist on this. There's a lot of work that still needs to be done. We're getting lost in trillions of dollars that Congress is throwing around, and so 1.4 billion seems like a pretty small number, but it's still not a small number. And so I think it's incumbent for us to continue to push the talking points that have been really carefully put together by the Alliance. Make sure that in particular, and some of our Republican members that are fiscally watching things understand that this investment is actually going to save a lot of money over time, create jobs in the shorter term, and save a lot of money. The efforts we did last year was a lot of bricks and mortar, and sort of tangible things on infrastructure and whatnot. It's time now to really pivot onto the biodiversity and what RAWA can really do. And we are all aware of things that are declining and the concerns we have for the future. So I think that, we got the right talking points. We certainly got the right champions. I think we gotta keep the pressure up. I know that's what we did during last Congress for passing some of those things, is just not let off the throttle. I know we're going to do that. I know the Alliance will. I know Colin and everybody on this call is dedicated to this. So, and I know Colin's got additional comments to share, but I'm really honored to have this opportunity to be a part of this team and to share the spotlight. And I would be remiss without thanking Taylor Schmitz for my team. I get credit, he does the work. And so along with the rest of the Alliance, I know it's being very carefully managed. And Sean, excellent work on your part, and Ron, your team. So with that, Sarah, I'll turn it over to Colin and let him enlighten us on how we're going to get there.
Good. No, thanks, Jeff. It's great to be with you. Great to be with you, Sarah. Great to be with everybody. And I mean, the fact, look, we had two, senior members of Congress and senior members of the House and the leading conservationists in the Senate on a call with all of us just shows the momentum that all of you have built. And as Jeff said, I mean, they're going to spend real money in the coming months, and as they try to rebuild this economy. And yet, the natural infrastructure, the habitat, the all the different values they provide are still a little bit of an afterthought in some of those conversations, right? Whether it's the the flood abatement value or the clean water value or the wildlife habitat value that we're all talking about today. And so I think my request of everybody on this phone, on this line is like, I know you're tired. I know you've been pushing this for years. Like, we're in the red zone, right? So kind of leave it all on the field. The way this is going to play out over the next few weeks, you're going to have an address by the president on Friday talking about the COVID package. Their next major kind of announcement is going to be infrastructure. And we're doing everything we can to make sure there's enough kind of in the natural space that we can kind of fit under. Like, again, it won't be a talking point at like the presidential level, but it'll be in kind of a bucket that we can kind of fit into. He's going to give a speech to both houses of Congress in April. Again, talking about infrastructure, and we'll try to make sure that in that is enough language that we can kind of kind of tack onto. The good news is that the new Secretary of Interior, who will be confirmed probably next week, Deb Haaland, has been an original co-sponsor of the bill from the beginning. And so, been a huge champion of the bill. So we have allies there. I've already gotten commitments from the White House to be supportive, when it's their turn to weigh in. And I think we're closer on the Senate side with potential sponsors on the Republican side. There's some good conversations going underway right now that we're going to need folks' help on, but I won't bore you with all the details. It's a long-winded way of saying that, like, this isn't a 2-year campaign anymore. This is like a 2-month campaign, that we basically have to make sure that the work that we're doing is meeting the moment. And what I mean by that specifically is making the case that the jobs that are going to be created, that the fact that the investments in implementing the state wildlife action plans and the work on tribal lands is frankly going to create more jobs per dollar we invest than almost anything else we can invest in. And the reason for that is fairly simple, because unlike a road project or a clean energy project or a water pipes project, most of the money is going into labor, right? I mean, of course, there are other costs, but compared to a traditional road project where you got to pay for huge equipment and heavy asphalt or concrete or whatever, a lot of the cost goes into people. And it's a way to actually basically make the argument that natural infrastructure, the Recovering America's Wildlife Act, is a smarter. If the goal is jobs, this is as smart of investment as there is. This isn't it's not altruistic, right? This isn't like kind of just a nice to have. Frankly, we need to put people to work, and we need to put people to work in every corner of the country, which this will do. A lot of the infrastructure investments are going to be heavily oriented in cities, which is important. I mean, there's a lot of decrepit infrastructure. I'm near some right now in Wilmington, Delaware, but I think we have terracotta pipes under a couple of mains here. But we're going to need jobs in every corner of the country, and the Recovering America's Wildlife Act does that. And so I would just encourage folks to lean in on the economics. Jeff made the exact right point on the fiscal conservatism side, which is this ounce of prevention is going to be worth a pound of cure, right? We are going to save just an ungodly amount of money on the back end, and we're going to avoid an ungodly amount of pain on the regulatory side and the litigation side if we can save species before they reach the brink of crisis. And frankly, that'll free us up to focus on those species that really need it, because there are plenty of those that are in trouble. But for those of you with the state agencies or on the federal side, I'm hoping you're educating, and it's not lobbying, but educating everyone to the maximum extent you can. Please get your commissions involved. Please get your governor's offices involved. If you have good relationships with members directly, if you have relationships with the legislature, now is the time. And don't be bashful. If there's any tools you need, reach out to Sean, reach out to me, reach out to Jeff. Any of our teams will provide more than you wanted in terms of the amount of support as we're trying to get things across. But we got to make noise. There's going to be a lot of volume and a lot of folks clamoring, right? I mean, you think about all the pent up demand for infrastructure that's been falling apart in this country for decades. We just got to make sure we break through the noise a little bit, because again, we're looking for less than 1% of any, less than half of 1% of anything. I mean, it's a fraction of nothing in the grand scheme of things. Not even that. It's like 1/10 of 1%. But we got to make sure we're heard, and we got to make sure we're being heard from different voices, different folks, kind of showing the breadth and depth of the coalition. But if there ever was a time to lean in, it's right now. And let me just end with this. I couldn't be prouder of like the partnerships that have been built. I mean, Ron's leadership, Sean's leadership, someone that has been a workhorse this entire thing, who's just done an absolute, just an absolutely masterful job is Jen Mock Schaefer, who has just, kind of kept everybody on track as all the different iterations are going through. I want to thank, my entire team, folks like Naomi Edelson and Mike Leahy and Jill and Lou Carpenter, I think's on the call, and John Cantor. I mean, just a whole bunch of folks have been carrying big pieces of this. Our great comms team. Jeff's team has been spectacular. Taylor's been an absolute rock star, and so many of you as well. And I'm also just proud of how many like the state chapters have been involved. You're gonna hear from Janice, who ran our Texas affiliate for a long time. I mean, the Texas Alliance is fantastic, right? The partnerships. And frankly, I think in addition to building an advocacy coalition, I love that it's built better relationships between advocacy organizations and state agencies all across the country. And if we can keep that momentum going with Jeff's state caucuses and our affiliates and chapters and other state agencies, I mean, we can make real things happen. And so I just think this has been one of the most important advocacy efforts I've ever been a part of. And I just want to thank all of you for getting us to this point, but realizing we still got a few more inches to go. So let's kind of push through the line and get into the end zone. Thanks, Sarah.
Wow, Colin, thank you so much. I appreciate your comments. Jeff, I appreciate yours. You guys you energize us all the more. And especially with that virtual, I'm going to call it a sunrise, Colin, behind your head. I'm going to say that's a sun rising on Recovering America's Wildlife Act. It's going to happen. Just so incredibly grateful for our leaders in this arena. And so with that, Mr. Sean, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And thank you, Colin and Jeff, really for your leadership on this and all of the work of your teams. We wouldn't have gotten here to this point without all that work, all the partners that are lined up behind this. It's really a huge partnership and a testament to the strength of what you can do when people are united around a shared vision. So really, thank you so much to all your help and leadership on this. And now it is my great pleasure to introduce Janice Bazanson of the Texas Alliance for America's Fish and Wildlife, who has joined us this evening to introduce the video we're about to premiere for you all. And also just quick thanks again to all the members of Congress, CHAMPs, their staff, for all the work that they're putting into this. It's an amazing lift for everybody, and thanks again for everybody being here.
Thank you, Sean. We are so delighted by the Recovering America's Wildlife Act. We think it's absolutely one of the most important pieces of legislation ever. And there are now over 165 businesses and organizations in Texas who have joined the Texas Alliance for America's Fish and Wildlife. This is really, really important to us. We here in Texas have benefited from having a video that was created by Texas Parks and Wildlife Department, our state wildlife agency. So it gave us the idea that it would be helpful to have a national video that groups from all over the country could use. And so we commissioned a talented wildlife videographer to create this. We want everyone to feel free to use it in whatever way will help to forward the Recovering America's Wildlife Act. You'll see Sean has added the logo from the Alliance to the end of it. Feel free to do that with your logo or use it any way you can if you have any questions. We are also created a toolkit with some social media memes. So any way you can use this, we want you to do so, and we really hope you'll enjoy the premiere of it.
One century ago, many animals in the United States were on the brink of extinction. Thankfully, we began aggressive conservation efforts that helped recover some of our nation's most iconic wildlife. These successes are largely due to conservation legislation and funding, giving us the resources to save our natural heritage. But many fish and wildlife species haven't had the benefit of conservation funding. Now there is a bill in Congress to remedy that. The Recovering America's Wildlife Act. 1/3 of our bird species are in need of urgent conservation action. Many amphibians and reptiles are in decline across the country. Some of our fish are endangered, and others are getting close. Pollinators that we depend on are struggling, and some of our greatest wildlife migrations are disappearing. We have the science and ability to save many of these species.
Right down here to the right, 5 o'clock.
Now is the time to invest in the future of our wildlife.
Great. That was our shot.
The Recovering America's Wildlife Act will dedicate $1.4 billion each year to conserve and restore our at-risk fish and wildlife. This act has strong bipartisan support, and it is not a new tax. Funding will go to conservation efforts in states, territories, and tribal lands that will help wildlife and the habitats they depend on. It will also connect more people to nature through outdoor recreation and education programs, which is good for our children and enriches our communities. Americans love and need our wild places, and we want to see our wildlife thrive. The Recovering America's Wildlife Act will ensure the health of fish and wildlife for generations to come. Ask your members of Congress to support the Recovering America's Wildlife Act.
All right. Great video. Thanks so much, Janice, and the rest of the Texas Alliance folks for putting that together for us. We hope folks are looking forward to using that. It should be a great tool to raise awareness, really rally the troops. You know I feel energized and ready to get after it whenever I see that video. So I hope everybody has the same reaction to that as well. We look forward to a robust strategy to utilize this on social media and a lot of web platforms once the bill's introduced. And, as Janice mentioned, it's easily customizable. We hope folks will use it to energize your constituencies and your networks, and feel free to reach out to get a copy of that. We'll make it available online. It is already in the Alliance Toolkit, and I know several folks have seen it blasted around on several lists as well. So hopefully folks are jazzed up about that. We're reaching the end of our agenda here. Thanks so much, everybody, for joining us. I think we have some time if anybody else wanted to chime in, any of the other Alliance partners wanted to jump in and say a few words or ask questions of any of our panelists that are sticking around, but I know want to be mindful of folks' time too. Anybody have anything they want to say?
Oh, come on, the North American's not that painful being on screens for 8 hours a day for a week straight, is it? Don't you want to spend a few more minutes on Zoom right now? You tell me you really want to. I know you do.
This is Kendra from Ohio. I have something to say. Fantastic presentations tonight. Really enjoyed hearing from everybody, and very refreshing to hear from the Congress people. I also want to share that don't forget about your universities out there. The universities all have Hill staff, and they lobby for things all the time. And we have a meeting with some of our folks on Monday to talk about this. So don't forget about the university people. They have a very loud voice too.
Thanks, Kendra. Appreciate that.
And Sean, I want to lift up something you said too. I don't know if either Tim Hubner or Alan Fireman is still on the phone, but the amount of work that these two staff members did, so Tim's with Congresswoman Dingell and Alan's with Congressman Fortenberry, has been spectacular. I mean, the amount of work, I've worked with a million congressional staff over the years, and like to work through every iteration, we're still having weekly calls on this stuff, which is like unheard of. And so I just want you to know that in addition to having great champions that we saw on the screen, the behind the scenes work by some of these folks is spectacular. Especially, I think it just shows the strength of the idea, but also the strength of the coalition. So just want to give a quick shout out to those two. I don't know if they're still on. I'm hoping they are.
They probably had to go back to work. Thanks, Colin. Appreciate that. You're right. They are working hard. Anyone else want to chime in with any final thoughts or questions for anyone? Hearing none. Thanks so much again, Sarah, Colin, Jeff, Janice, everyone that's working hard to get this thing done. We look forward to working with everybody. I am putting my contact information here in the chat for folks that want to get in touch about getting a copy of the video or any of the new materials that we're creating. I know NWF's also created a toolkit for folks to use to engage members of Congress with the best and latest talking points and materials. So feel free to get in touch, reach out. We look forward to working with everybody and enjoy the rest of the North American Conference. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great night.